Hey everyone, Anthony Scott here of ToyHypeUSA.com. Today we are reviewing FanHome's Iron Man subscription box number 17, which includes issues 63, 64, 65, 66, and Assembly Guide 06. Each of these magazines comes with additional parts and accessories to continue on the build for Iron Man, and we're going to be taking a closer look at that. Big shout out and thank you to FanHome for sending along for review. Greatly appreciate that. For more information about the subscription, make sure to check out FanHome, and you can do so by clicking off the hyperlinks off ToyHypeUSA.com, as well as the links right below in the YouTube description. Takes you to FanHome. Thank you for clicking those links. Here's a closer look at issue 63 with Marvel Buster armor right there on the cover, and you have a look at the parts that are included in this issue. It's also featured right there on the front. So inside, Ultimate Armor Wars, a global techno thriller. A continuation of this article, as well as some great images from the comics. And about halfway through, we have a look at the steps and the parts that are included in this issue. This is where it's going to go. Here is a closer look at the parts. You should have 2 bags of screws. And assembly-wise, you're going to be screwing the plate hinge in as shown. There's your look there. And part 2 of assembly. Screwing this into that as shown, using the EM screws, and final assembly. So that's what it's going to look like when it's done. Here's an exploded view to help you guys with assembly. And this is where it's going to go. Next part of the article, the Guardians Cosmic Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy. A continuation. And we have Marvel Buster, Friends Against Friends. A look on the back is from Ultimate Armor Wars #1 from December 2009. And a look at the next issue. I am going to assemble this now, and let's take a closer look. Here's a look at final assembly. The plate hinge is now in the cleft plate. And here's a look at that hinge. Fits on as shown. Screws in on both sides. And you attach it to the plate with these 2 additional screws. And I am now moving on to the next issue. Up next, issue 64. And here's a look at the parts we're going to be using for assembly. Inside this issue, Motorcycle Armor Iron Man is featured on the cover there. And first article, Disassembled System Reboot. We have a continuation. About halfway through, we have a look at the parts and the steps for assembly. Here is a closer look at these parts. Keep in mind we've done this once before with the other leg. And here's a closer look at assembly for the right leg. That fits on there as shown. Screw that in as shown. Here's the second part. Fit the gold pieces on. These look like they just push them right in. And this part right here, this is the assembly. This one we're going to be putting to the side for now. Here's a look at the steps, the exploded view, which helps greatly. And there's a look at that. Okay, so next article, Rich Boy, Tony Stark's fortune. And a continuation, along with additional characters with a lot of money. And motorcycle armor, iron versus adamantium. So, on the back, we have Invincible Iron Man Volume 1, issue number 20 from January 2010. A bio on that, and a look at the next issue. I am going to work on assembly right now, and let's take a closer look. Here's a look at final assembly. So we've done this once before with the left leg. This is the right. This piece right here that I'm pointing to is the part that I just put on. I did not use the tape that's included, which is this little thing right here. But it is screwed in as shown. And this part for now, we're just going to be putting to a side. I also pushed in these two gold parts. And I am now moving on to the next issue. Up next, issue 65, which is Nanobite Armor Iron Man. And you have a look at the parts that are included to continue on with the build. So, the first article, Siege, Target Asgard. You have a continuation. And about halfway through, you have a closer look at the parts as well as the steps to continue the build. This is the central leg support. It's coming with these 3 parts right here and 2 bags of screws. Here is a look at the steps, or excuse me, one of them's a spring, the other's a screw. Spring goes in there as shown. Close it up, screw it in, and there's a look at the assembly. Here's an exploded view, which helps greatly as you're working on assembly. So closer look at that. This is where it's all going to go. This part right here fits in between here. So there's final assembly. And this is where it's going to go. The legs are not going to attach yet. That's coming in a later step. Next article, The Defender, Daredevil, and Iron Man. A continuation. And we have Nanobite Armor, Back from the Dead. Fing Fang Foom is featured below. And finally, on the back, we have Siege number 1 from March 2010. A description about that, and we have a look at the next issue. I am going to work on assembly, and let's take a closer look. Here's a look at the completed assembly. This part is in there, screws placed in, and once it's closed, it's gonna stick together pretty well. Before you screw it, the spring does pop it back open, so just make sure to hold on to it tight. I am now moving on to issue 66. Up next, issue 66, and Fing Fang Foom Buster is featured on the cover there. And here's a look at the parts we're going to be using to continue on with the assembly. First article, Friends Reunite, the trio is back. A continuation. And about halfway through, here's a look at the assembly. These are the parts we're going to be getting. We're getting this one big shell that you saw in the bag. the smaller parts, a spring, and a bag of screws. Here is a look at the steps. Push that in there as shown. Screwing this in, there's a little piece there. And here's a look at the final assembly. This exploded view helps tremendously when trying to assemble it. So you're going to be putting the spring in there, this piece on, and then screwing it in. And this is where it's going to go, right there. Next article, AIs, artificial intelligences. A continuation. And now we have Fing Fang Foom Buster, anti-dragon armor. On the back, we have Avengers Prime #1 from August 2010, a description on that, and a look at the next issue. And I am now going to work on the assembly. Here's a look at final assembly. This part is screwed in as shown, and the spring, which you see down there. These smaller pieces, we're just putting to a side for now. We're not using this in this step. And I am now moving on to assembly guide number 6. Here's a closer look at the parts as well as the assembly guide here. Just as we've done with other assembly guides, this includes the base as well as the panel, or the frame of the panel, I should say. You're getting 2 bags of screws right there, and you're getting these 2 parts. Assembly is going to be the same. You're going to start off with putting the light panel on as shown, screwing that in with 4 screws, attaching it to right here. So just make sure to pay attention. The location where this goes, that's where it's going to go. Screwing that in with some screws. There's your look at there. And completed assembly. So I'm going to complete this now. Let's take a closer look. Here is final assembly for the base. As you can see, it's all attached on here. All the sides and everything. This one's the new one, just attached. Here is a look at the bottom. As you can see, it's all lined up and all. Here is a closer look at the bottom for you. So that's how it's going to look once it's done. Thanks again to FanHome for sending along for review. Greatly appreciate that. I am Anthony Scott at toyhypeusa.com. My recommendation would be to subscribe. You can do so by clicking the link right below in the YouTube description or on the hyperlink off of toyhypeusa.com. Thanks for watching this video and stay tuned for more.